thinking back on like all the mission experiences I had, I think it's kind of interesting because we all go in the mission with pretty much one thing on our mind: baptisms and conversions and maybe like reactivating people. And everyone has a different experience. Everyone learns how God's going to use them on their mission. And I think on my mission I kind of learned that, you know, while my goal, the purpose I was striving towards was to invite people to come to Christ by converting them and teaching the gospel to them, is that God has other uses for you. And I mean, if you think about it just from like an almost military perspective, you know, you're God's guys on the ground. And while you have standing orders of preach the gospel, God has other children that have other needs. And you're the people that he has closest to them, and he's going to send you to them. And so I think there were a lot of areas I had where I didn't really, with very little baptisms. But I found myself in a big healing and comforting role. And when I think back on my mission, I think those are the two things that I remember. I remember baptisms and that feeling of, yes, this person's accepting the gospel and their family is, you know, being incorporated in the ward, and I'm so happy for them. But then I think a lot about the people that I just kind of sat with and I just kind of talked with. And I think, you know, I remember there was one member, actually. She was from Mexico and she had cancer at the time, and we would go and visit her just to cheer her up. Her family weren't members, and so we were kind of the presence of the church that came to visit her the most. And you know, I remember we kind of saw her get worse and worse. And one of the last times that I saw her was that she was in a lot of pain, and it seemed like she wasn't, you know, really able to listen to us. We'd kind of like talk about spiritual things, about how Christ comforts us in our times of need. And yeah, she didn't seem to kind of be listening. I was kind of wondering, like, well, are we accomplishing anything here? And I remember just kind of knowing that we just needed to be there and needed to, I think, you know, almost represent Christ as physically as much as possible. Let her know that she's not alone. And I think, you know, when I think back on that moment, I think that's the most Christ-like I ever felt on my mission. And it's kind of a different thing, because you know, I remember like on the last day of the mission, we all told our success stories, and everyone's like, I remember when this family went to the temple, and I remember when this person got baptized. But when I think of the moment when I knew that I was doing what Jesus wanted me to do, it was that moment when I was just sitting with this lady that had cancer, and you know, didn't know if I was doing anything that was making a difference. But knowing that no matter what was happening, no matter what was going on, that's what Christ wanted me to do, and I know that's what Christ would do if he was here. And so that was really a really special moment. It kind of, you know, helped me to look back on my mission and on the times when I was like, man, like I went 6 months without a baptism. Like, what was I even doing then? Is knowing that God had other things for me to do. He had other ways to touch his children. And that path to the gospel isn't, you know, it doesn't start with preaching the gospel to them. There are other ways that they have to be prepared. And if they're in a situation where they feel like there's no hope or there's nobody that cares about them, then their very first step to accepting the gospel is to know that God's sending people to go and minister to them. And so that's something that I've always been proud of on my mission, is that God called me to try to help and heal people and to be there for people when he couldn't physically be there.